For a kid from Oxnard, this is surreal. To be able to stand in front of this sign on this dot means a lot. And for a college coach of 20 years, talking with players and parents, other coaches, this is a little nerve-wracking. But I'm going to picture us all in a huddle. I'm a little better with those. Now, 5 years ago, when I was given an opportunity to build my own program, I wanted to experiment with an idea. An idea to build a program rooted in relationships. Now, this is not anything new. Coaches all over the country in every sport have an idea that they want to implement. For some, it's a style of play. For others, it's the experience that they want to give their student athletes. But for most, it's that relationship between them, their coaching staff, and their athletes. But something was happening around college athletics, specifically college basketball. More and more transfers were looking for a new fit. Someone's not doing their job. Now, whether or not it's because coaches were driven on wins and losses, maybe they were presented in a way where they had to go get the best as opposed to the best fit. Whatever the case was, college athletics was getting a little bit more transactional. A new term started to pop up, relational coaching. And so when given this opportunity, I wanted to challenge it. Now, how does any of this relate to code switching? That practice of changing one's speech, appearance, or behaviors all to optimize a community or social group. Well, before I get into that, I want to tell you a little story. When I was 9 or 10 years old, my dad became a season ticket holder. Now, for most in Southern California, you would think that's the Lakers or Dodgers. Well, it was the Clippers. Because back then, Lakers, Dodgers were good, and the Clippers were the good kind of affordable. Now, so affordable that we were sitting on the lower bowl of the sports arena. And I was able to meet and take pictures with the NBA legends around the league. I was even able to shoot free throws before games. But nonetheless, this was a time for me and my dad. Now, my dad and I, we started doing more and more things together. He was my coach. He coached me in everything. There was baseball. Didn't really like that too much. I felt I was a magnet to the ball. And oftentimes I found myself at first base holding back the tears because I got beaten so hard. Then there was soccer. Now, soccer was a little different. Didn't like that one much because I tried to measure how much we had to run as it relates to scoring. But then there was basketball. Basketball was different. It was fast. It was exciting. It was everything that Magic Johnson and the Lakers showed us. And it was what our conversations were at those Clipper games. Now, for my dad and I, because we started getting deeper into a relationship, I started seeing that he was really two identities in one. He was my dad, but then he was also my coach. So trying to pivot and analyze what hat was my dad wearing? Was he coaching me up or disciplining me? Was he teaching me game strategies or a life lesson? Now, I say this because this is what code switching was for me back then. And after 15 years of experience, this is what I wanted to focus on when taking over that program. I wanted to build relationships as it related to an element of leadership. And so if I were to ask you, what are those elements of leadership that you've learned throughout your career that you would implement if you started taking over a group of individuals? And better yet, if that element was relationships, what would they be? Now, I'm sure if we were to take a tally of all of those answers, we would get so many different combinations. So what I'd like to do is share the 3 that I focused on in my time with that program. Now, the first was that careful balance between pride and ego. Now, pride for me is who someone is. It's the root of what someone is bringing to the table as it relates to the who, their family, their heritage, their culture, sometimes their country. And whether or not a grandmother raises this person, sometimes you see that grandmother in their actions, in their decision making. And for a lot of folks, it is their country, their culture that you witness as they maneuver their day. Now, ego is different. It's the body of work. It's all of the accolades and achievements that someone gets along their career. For coaches, wins, losses. For players, points scored, rebounds, assists. For fundraisers, dollars raised. For elected officials, elections won. But the reason why these 2 are important is because when you attack pride, you're attacking the fundamental person and where they come from. They're going to take offense because it's a direct attack on their families, on their country. And if you diminish their ego, well, now you're diminishing what they've done, what their life path has been. So it's very important not to attack or diminish one or the other, but to lift them both up at the same time and acknowledge that they do coexist. And if they coexist within someone, they must also coexist in how we communicate, how we develop, and how we understand them. Now, the second aspect is getting to the point where we can anticipate and predict our student athletes, get to the point where we know them. Now, oftentimes we do this naturally. How many times are we on the freeway and we're starting to anticipate or predict other drivers? As parents, we start to predict, all right, is my son or daughter going to bolt into the street? Are they about to fall? It's no different with coaching. We have to get to the point where we want to see them and understand when they fail, when they're about to fail, when they're about to get into a slump, when they are heating up into a nice little streak of made baskets. Whatever the case is, that is what we're trying to teach our student athletes. Predict each other, anticipate each other. But on the flip side, we have to be predictable as coaches. Student athletes have to know when we're going to be there for them, what we're going to say. And meeting student athletes where they are allows us to develop them in their current space, in their current thought process, and in their current development process. Now, the final element that we wanted to focus on was culture. And building a culture so strong that it can absorb and embrace any experience that our newcomers were bringing into our program. Now, why is culture important? Culture is a lot of times defined as the behaviors and decisions that a group of people make. But every newcomer, new coach that is now within the program brings the experiences and the traumas to it. And so in teaching our student athletes to fully understand one's pride, one's ego, getting to the point where they can fully anticipate and predict each other, allows the walls to come down. The walls of these newcomers who are timid and may be nervous of their new environment. that we're able to now move them towards something together. And focusing on the locker room was the number one priority for me. Because it takes those members of the locker room to create the behaviors, to create the decisions that a new culture can be born from. And the cultures will always change because the people in the room change. And I'm very proud that our program was a beacon for other athletes because they knew we would embrace, support, and absorb their experiences no matter what. And so I leave you with this final thought. In linguistic code switching, it's moving between one or two languages in order to connect with someone on a deeper level. Now, leadership is the same. Leadership is the moving between one or two elements of leadership in order to influence people. And being able to influence someone is leadership. Leadership should not be a decision we have to make. It should be the result of being a servant leader, serving those in the room, leading those hearts that are evolving who we are. And just as my dad did with his family, I will also do with mine. So that the idea of relational coaching is my idea worth sharing. Thank you.